Hello, my name is Malin and welcome back to my channel, Malin Tries to Read. Today I'm going to be doing another video where I try a specific genre, and this time it is indeed a genre that I'm just not really used to and that is kind of outside of my comfort zone, which is the contemporary genre. I had a long debate with my friends about what exactly contemporary meant, because it is a genre that a lot of people are like, what exactly does it mean? And it could literally fit within a lot of other genres. You could have contemporary romance, and that's quite specific. You can also have like contemporary fantasy, which is a specific subgenre of fantasy. You can have so many different categories that include the genre contemporary. So I'm going to put up the definition here that I found just by Googling it. Contemporary/realistic. Realistic fiction creates imaginary characters and situations that depict our world and society. It focuses on themes of growing up and confronting personal and social problems. This genre portrays characters coming to understand themselves and others. From what I understand personally of the genre and how I'm going to be using that definition is that I'm only going to be reading books that are purely contemporary. So I'm not going to put in any specifically contemporary romance, because that is the genre of its own, and I do intend to make a video on that as well at some point. I think there can be romance in the book, but it should not be the main genre of the book, and the book should mostly just be the main genre is contemporary, and then maybe there are subgenres as well on top of it, but that's not the main category that it's in. So the first book that I'm going to be reading for this is Anxious People by Frederick Backman, and I have already started it, so I'll be talking about it in a little bit. But basically this tells the story of a bank robber who fails at robbing the bank he's trying to rob and ends up going into a apartment viewing, so like people who are trying to buy a place, and there's like a viewing with several people in there, and he takes them hostage. And we start the book following the interviews that the cops on the case are doing when they're asking the hostages what happened, because they have not found the bank robber yet. And it's so far very witty and funny and clever and interesting, but lighthearted while dealing with serious topics. And yes, basically all the people that the bank robber has taken hostages are kind of nuts, I want to say. They all seem to have their own, backstory and past and everything that's gonna come into this story and make it more interesting and kind of a little bit harder to solve for the poor officer. So the second one I'm going to be reading is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman, and this book, I believe, tells the story of this woman, Eleanor Oliphant, who doesn't really understand social cues, as in she doesn't really know what she should be saying, shouldn't be saying, should be doing, shouldn't be doing, and kind of just does whatever she wants and is completely fine with that. Basically, it says here, everything changes when she meets Raymond, the bumbling and deeply unhygienic IT guy from her office. When she and Raymond together save Sammy, an elderly gentleman who has fallen, the three rescue one another from the lives of isolation that they had been living. Ultimately, it is Raymond's big heart that will help Eleanor find the way to repair her own profoundly damaged one. If she does, she'll learn that she too is capable of finding friendship and even love after all. I want to specify that when you look at the Goodreads page of this book, it doesn't list romance as one of the main genres, so I don't believe that it is, and I still think that this fits within the mainly just contemporary category, which is why I'm going to pick up this book. And then the third book that I'm going to be reading for this vlog is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, which came out last year, I think. In the midst of a family crisis one late evening, white blogger Alex Chamberlain calls her African-American babysitter Amira, asking her to take toddler Briar to the local market for distraction. There, the security guard accuses Amira of kidnapping Briar, and Alex's efforts to right the situation turn out to be good intentions selfishly mismanaged. So I think this talks a lot more about race and kind of the way that society deals with it, I guess, and how white people deal with it, and how people with good intentions aren't always doing good deeds, I guess. I'm not sure what else. I haven't read the book yet, obviously, but I'm quite interested in reading it, and a lot of people were talking about it last year, so hopefully I'm going to enjoy this read as well. So yeah, that's it. That's the three books that I'm going to be reading in this vlog, and I'm going to be starting with Anxious People, so we'll talk to you guys when I have read a little bit more. far, I have to say I'm quite enjoying it, but it took me a little bit to get there. Basically, the very first few chapters kind of made me think, wow, I'm gonna be annoyed by every single freaking character in this book, because so many of them are just like incredibly frustrating and irritating, to the point that I was like, I really just want to slap this person. And it happened so many times and I was just like, I don't know if I can handle this. But I have to say that I do enjoy the humor so far in the book and the way that it's written. It's extremely witty and just fun and funny to read. And I think the author has such a unique and interesting humor that I'm really enjoying to read from. The only thing is that it makes things a little bit confusing every now and then. There's a few chapters where you get the point that he's trying to make you think, okay, this person is this or this person is that, and you have that thought, and then by the end of the chapter it's completely changed and you're like, wait a minute, there's a link between that person and this person, and it's barely revealed now. And he does this a lot, which kind of annoys me a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I appreciate what you're doing, but do you have to do it like every chapter? I'm exaggerating because chapters are actually super short, like very, very short. Some of them are half a page long and that's it. Some of them are a little bit longer, but in general, the chapters are quite short, which makes it a fast read, I think, because I often feel that way about books when they have shorter chapters. I just want to pick them up more because I'm aware that I can just put it down at any time. I don't really like to put a book down in the middle of a chapter, and so when a book has like really, really long chapters, I'm like, I don't really want to pick it up right now because I'm not going to be able to make it through a single chapter right now. But yeah, I think there are a few passages that are a little bit confusing, but once the confusion is, you know, settled and resolved, it gets better and I enjoy it more. And same with the characters. I think there's a lot of characters that are extremely irritating and I'm just like, I can't stand you. But then there are a few others that I am like, okay, I'm really rooting for you, I'm rooting for this person, and the fact that I'm able to root for anyone at all means that I can read this book and be happy, because I need to be able to have at least one character in a book that I'm like, yeah, I like you, and you're gonna make it till the end, and you're gonna be the one character that I really enjoy until the end. But if there's none of those in a book, then I don't think I can generally enjoy myself reading a book. So just to go into the story a little bit, we do start the book by the moment that this police officer is interviewing some of the hostages that were taken hostage by the bank robber, and he just starts with asking these questions to, I think the first person is the real estate agent that was there, and the people that are being interviewed, the hostages in general, are extremely unhelpful. And I think, this is not a spoiler because I don't know for sure, it's just my first guess. From the very beginning, it seems to me like maybe all of these hostages and characters are being frustratingly annoying on purpose and unhelpful on purpose, because they bonded with the bank robber in some way and are trying to protect him. Because in the story, it starts with us realizing that they don't know where the bank robber is. He took those people hostages. Then the police officer came in, managed to get everyone out, and then apparently we learned this quite early on, there was like a pool of blood in the middle of the room and no one, like not a single person in sight. They heard like a gunshot and then saw the pool of blood, and then there was not a single person left. So the police officer who's investigating is like, clearly someone must have helped him, one of the hostages is lying and helped him, and he's working in tandem with another police officer who's described as the older police officer and then the younger police officer. And the older one is one of these irritating people as well. You'll see when you read it why, if you decide to read this book. But basically he just annoys me as much as all the hostages so far. And at the moment I think it's just like we're discovering what happened drip by drip. Like it's really just giving you the story from the moment that everything, you know, stopped happening, like after they were taken hostages, after they were getting out, and we just don't know where the bank robber is, and we're interviewing the hostages, and then we go back in time every now and then, including to the moment that the bank robber made his decision to rob a bank and all that kind of stuff. I keep saying the bank robber because that's how he's called in the book. Like I'm, you know, I just reached chapter 27 and up till now we still don't know his name, and I don't know whether we will at all or if he's just gonna be kept being called the bank robber. But I think it contributes to the feeling of confusion that comes a little bit off from this book to me. There's a lot of passages that I think are confusing on purpose, and you know, just links between certain people and certain stories are revealed at the end of certain chapters, like a little mini cliffhanger thing. And it's interestingly done. I just feel like it's doing it a little bit too much for me, for my taste, but we'll see how I feel about it at the end of the book. I do think that the dialogue is very well written. In general, I think the writing in this book covers a lot of heavier topics, but in a very light-hearted way, which I enjoy. And I think, I haven't read any Matt Haig books, but one of my friends who's reading along with me this book said that if I enjoy this, I should definitely give Matt Haig a chance, especially The Humans, because apparently very similarly to Frederick Backman, he writes about heavy topics, serious topics, but in a light-hearted manner. I want to give you just one specific example about the writing style and the type of thing that I mean from this one page. There are simply some things that all normal people understand that you must never under any circumstances do. You mustn't tell lies, you mustn't steal, you mustn't kill, and you mustn't throw stones at birds. We all agree on that. Except maybe swans, because swans can actually be passive-aggressive little bastards. But apart from swans, you mustn't throw stones at birds, and you mustn't tell lies. Unless, well, sometimes you have to, of course. Like when your children ask, why does it smell like chocolate in here? Are you eating chocolate? But you definitely mustn't steal or kill. We can agree on that. Well, you mustn't kill people anyway. And most of the time, you mustn't even kill swans, even if they are bastards. But you're allowed to kill animals if they've got horns, or are standing in the forest, or if they're bacon. But you must never kill people. Well, unless they're Hitler. You're allowed to kill Hitler if you've got a time machine and an opportunity to do it. I'm gonna stop here, there's more in this page, but I just thought that's so representative of the type of writing that you have in this book, so it gives you a fairly good idea whether you would like that writing style or not. I'm gonna stop here because I don't have that much else to say so far. I'm quite excited to read the rest of it. I think I'm enjoying it more and more progressively. Like at the beginning, because I was so irritated by some of the characters, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like this, and some things were very confusing as well, so it was adding on to my feeling of, oh no, I'm not sure. But then progressively as we go on in the book, I'm like loving so many more of the chapters and so many more of the characters, and learning to really appreciate the writing style as well, and even the confusing elements in it. So quite excited to get to the end of this book and let you know my final thoughts. Hi again. So last night I finished Anxious People by Frederick Backman. And oh boy, did I go from I'm not entirely sure about this to yeah, I'm liking this to fuck, I loved it and I rated it 5 stars. So some of my first concerns when I started reading this book were that the characters were extremely annoying, and that some of them, as in the hostages in the story, I just wanted to slap them. Like, they were just annoying me so freaking much, and I just couldn't handle it. And then as we go on, I realized that the way that Frederick Backman writes is someone said it in an Instagram post recently about another book by him, but basically he kind of gives you the tiniest lens, the tiniest point of view on a situation, such as here, the hostages situation after the failed bank robber goes into this apartment viewing, and then he expands it slowly with each character, and you go from not knowing much at all and thinking certain things about that situation to knowing intimately every character's deep thoughts and having a completely different point of view about that situation. So it's extremely interesting because you really go on a journey with the characters, and it's not so much character development because everything happens within the span of, you know, the same day, and you know, it's all happening on New Year's Eve day, and you don't actually go from like one point in time to another point in time. You just go back and forth between the moment they're being interviewed and the moment they're being held hostages. So it's all happening in the same day. There's still like a connection that gets created between the reader and the characters, and it's incredible. I thought it was so well done. And yeah, just when I put down the book, first of all, I thought that every single element was linked somehow, and I thought it was incredible planning and work from the author's part, because it just makes you feel like whenever you're reading the book, there are so many elements that you're like, oh, that's just a random thing, and yeah, I can think of a random explanation for it. Like, you don't think too much about it, it doesn't seem that important to you, and you're just like, I wonder why, and that's it. And then you go to the next chapter, or like you get to the cliffhanger at the end of one of the chapters and you're like, oh, it's linked. It's definitely linked. It's super relevant and here's an explanation and wow. And you just don't expect these, and yeah, I just thought it was really well written, really well done. I have to say that this book has both made me laugh out loud and almost cry. So good job. I feel like books don't often do that to me, so when they do, I want to give them the deserved 5 stars. And I did put it through Copile as well because I started using it this year and it ended up as a 5 stars as well, so we're all good there. So I'm going to be reading, I think, Eleanor Oliphant next because I'm in the mood for that, and I feel like it's also going to be quite funny. I don't know that much about the style of writing for such a fun age. I've just heard a lot of amazing things about it, but it sounded more serious in my head, like from what I've heard other people say about it. And I think I'm still in a mood where I need to read something a little bit more lighthearted right now, so probably Eleanor Oliphant first and then Such a Fun Age. Please ignore the state that I am in, that my hair is in. I made the mistake of stepping outside today and it is a deluge, so that was a bad idea. I just wanted to catch up with you guys on Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine because I've now reached page 99, so almost 100 pages, and just wanted to give my first thoughts. So my first impressions of this book is that I had the wrong first impressions of this book before picking it up, because I think maybe from what I had heard about it, I thought it was going to be a lot more upbeat than it is. So bear in mind, if you decide to read this book, that it starts off with the main character being extremely annoying and it continues with a lot of sad stuff. And I think maybe it's just because the friend that read it and recommended it to me, she thought the main character was really funny in her ways, and I understand where that's coming from. I can see how that's kind of funny, but it's not making me laugh. It's not funny, haha. It's like, huh, that's interesting funny, if that makes sense. So basically we follow Eleanor Oliphant, and she works at a design agency in Glasgow, I think, but she does a financial job there, so she's not one of the designers or anything, and she kind of seems very strange in her ways that she is interacting with other people, in the sense that she's very rude and very unable to perceive common social cues. So whenever someone says something, she'll answer in the most rude manner possible and then think that that person is being rude to her, because she's like, wow, they really have no social skills whatsoever, even though their job is literally to talk to people, and I'm the one people think is weird. So she keeps thinking that way. She really thinks in terms of the world is wrong and I am right because I was raised this way or something, and this is the way that I see the world. It is very clear after a little while we discover that something happened in her past that led to her mom being, I think, either in prison or in a hospital for mental illness that is, you know, bordering on dangerous type, and that there's some mention of her mother being the pretty face of evil or something. And our main character, Eleanor, also has some sort of scar on her face, and it's pretty clear that she was in a fire, and I have a feeling that it's leading to us discovering that her mother was the one who set the fire and tried to kill her daughter or something. But she's still in touch with her mom. She calls her mummy, which feels even more psychopathic to me. I don't know, it just gives me vibes of fictional sociopath that is a mummy's boy or a mummy's girl. I don't know. But she does act like her mother is a monster, and that she's aware that whenever she talks to her on the phone, she's gonna be awful to her and gonna say everything that is gonna try and hurt her mentally and hurt her feelings. So she's aware of this, but she calls her every week at a certain day, a certain time, without fault. We also discover that she's been in foster care placements that have gone from one to another or something, because she was such a strange child and already very weird, and so it just wasn't working out with most of the families that she was placed in. And currently in her situation in the present, she's also receiving visits from social care workers type of people. I don't exactly know what it is, but people who come and check in on her and make sure that she's doing okay, that she is integrating fine in her community, is working fine, etc., and receiving, you know, a decent amount of money from her work and able to live. So already it's a lot deeper and a lot heavier than I kind of expected plunging into this book. I kind of thought it was just gonna be, she's just a weird person who acts strange and just doesn't really understand social cues, and it was gonna be funny. But it's not. It's more sad and deep, and also she's extremely annoying and rude, and it's really hard to feel any, you know, pity for her, because she is such a dickhead to everyone. Like, she hates people, and she's so very clear about it. Like, she looks down on all of these people to the point that I understand them so much more than I understand her. Even the people who are talking behind her back. I get it. Like, she has a strange attitude, and you would do that in real life. You would be like, that was weird, this person did that, that was strange. And like, she acts as if, oh, they're just petty gossips and just so stupid, but it's like, you're the one treating them like trash, and then acting like they're just idiots because they're talking about it. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. So at the beginning, she's getting some issues with her computer at work, and so she asks the IT guy to come and help her, and meets him for the first time because he's a new guy, and his name is Raymond. And then at some point they go down the street together just by chance because they accidentally left at the same time, the office, and then they see this old man who collapses in the street. So Raymond is like a decent, normal person, and he's like, let's take him to the hospital, let's take care of him. But she's like, oh, he's probably drunk, leave him. Okay, Eleanor. So they do end up taking him to the hospital, and they kind of form a small, almost insignificant, I want to say, bond, where she kind of says a lot of the time accidentally, as in like not really purposefully, that yeah, fine, I'll come back and just say hi to the guy and see that he's okay with you, sure, whatever. So this happens, which kind of creates this small bond. So that's all really that's happened at the beginning, except for the fact that she's also gone to a concert because she won some tickets, and since then she's been absolutely obsessed with the main singer of the band that was playing, and has been researching him and pretty much stalking him. Like, she found out his address and all that, and yeah, her attitude can definitely be qualified as a stalker, and it's kind of creeping me out and just making me very uncomfortable. And I hope that she's gonna realize that's not okay to do at some point. I imagine that's the point, but still, that's pretty much it. It is fast-paced, the writing is nice, it's really, you know, flowy and all that, everything that I like in terms of writing style. So I'm okay to continue reading the book, but I have to say that so far, not exactly rooting for the main character, not exactly sure what's gonna happen, but I have a feeling that it's gonna become like maybe a small romance with that guy Raymond, even though she keeps saying that he's kind of gross and unattractive and all that. So I don't really see how that's gonna happen. I have no idea whether that's the plan or not, but yeah. So far I'm gonna predict it might end up being a 2 or 3 stars for me. We'll see. We'll see how I feel later. I have not finished yet. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine, but I have read another 100 pages of it, and I'm now about halfway through. So I just wanted to establish some new thoughts, because when I first talked about the book, I was saying things like, I don't really like the main character, she kind of irks me, I think she's kind of a bitch to everyone, and all that kind of stuff. I still kind of feel that way, but so much less than at the beginning. And I think the last 100 pages that I've read, the new 100 pages that I've read after the first 100, kind of led me to understand a little bit more the main character and feel a little bit more sympathetic towards her and her situation. Like, I already knew her situation from her childhood was bad, but now she also talked about things like having an ex who abused her, things like that. And the way she talks about things, you can tell she's genuinely trying, and there's a few passages where she's getting closer to some old people, in particular the guy that they helped save with that IT guy Raymond, and then she meets Raymond's mother as well, who's elderly, and when she meets both of those people, she feels like such a warmth just from their love and attention, and you know, like the way some old people basically, if you meet them and they like you, treat you like you're their own son or daughter, I guess. And it's kind of what happens with Eleanor, and I guess because she's never had the warmth of her own mother, who is a monster, this is kind of all new and novel to her, and I guess when she experiences it for the first time, she's very happily surprised. So it made me warmer to the character as well. Her reaction to this and the way she was enjoying it and the way she was like, I've never had that and that's amazing. Yeah, it definitely made me like her more, so I just wanted to specify this as I go on. Not much else to say. I am enjoying it enough that I want to continue reading it. I do think the writing style is very easy and flowy, like I said earlier, but I also still maintain the fact that maybe this is more of a prime example of the genre of contemporary fiction that showcases that it's not really a genre that's made for me. It's not something that I usually want to pick up, and I think this book is a perfect example of it. It's good and it's really good in its genre. It's just not a genre that I personally like, and I think when I read Frederick Backman's book, that was just an extraordinary feat for me. That was just like, okay, I adored this book and I adored him as a writer and as an author, but I don't know that I'm going to other contemporary books. Hello again. So I have now finished reading Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman, and I can already tell you that I rated it 3 stars in total. 1, I thought that it was beautifully written, very fast-paced. I enjoyed the writing style, and I did want to know what was going to happen next. I did want to continue reading it. I did not want to DNF it. I didn't, like stop myself from DNFing it just because of a video or anything like that, because that has been my rule this year, to DNF a book that I'm not enjoying in general. But I just thought that the main character was not very likable at the beginning. It took me a good 100 pages to really plunge into it, think, okay, this is what's happening, okay, I like her a little bit more, and now I'm finally rooting for her. But it took over 100 pages, because the first 100 pages I was like, I don't like this, I don't like her, and I don't know why I'm reading this book. And then it's in the next 100 ones, like from 100 to page 200, that I really started to enjoy our main character, Eleanor, and that I started getting it, I want to say. And then on top of that, I would kind of just say that this book was entertaining enough to read. Like, it was fine enough. I was like, okay, I want to know what's gonna happen next, like I said, but not as much as I would have a thriller or sci-fi or horror novel or fantasy novel. Frankly, I kind of enjoy myself more when I read these types of books, and I thought maybe because I read Anxious People first that, oh, maybe I've been missing out on the contemporary genre, but I think this is maybe more representative of the contemporary genre. Case in point with the fact that most of my friends who have read this book, and I just saw this on Goodreads because it tells you, like, once you finish the book, what's next, and then it shows you every person you know and you're friends with, their rating of the book if they have read it, and every single person rated it 5 stars. So I'm wondering, is this a very good representation of the contemporary genre? Which means then that maybe the genre is not so much for me, and that it's just not a genre that I enjoy that much. I didn't hate it, but I just also didn't love it. I didn't find it palpitating, and I wasn't like, I want to read more of this at all. So I think that's kind of my conclusion on Eleanor Oliphant, but it's not the end of my conclusion on contemporary books. This is the next book I'm going to be reading for this little series, Such of an Age by Kylie Reid. I'm a little bit more aware, I think, of the fact that this is going to touch deeper topics, but they're more on the side of racism in society and, I guess, fake allyship. I'm not entirely sure, but, white people complacency with racism. Not people who are actively racist, but people who are kind of just like doing nothing about it. I think that it's going to touch upon those topics. I'm not entirely sure. So I am quite interested in reading this book, and hopefully it might save the contemporary genre for me. I might be like, 2 out of 3, that's perfect. We'll see. back. And I've now read the first 100 pages of Such a Fun Age. So the first 2 chapters, I want to say, where we're introduced the main characters, were quite fun and fast-paced and flowed really nicely, and I really enjoyed the writing style at first. So let me summarize to you what happens in those chapters, although it's kind of the synopsis for the book. So basically we're following Amira, who is a babysitter. She's around 25 or 26 years old, I can't remember, and she babysits this little girl called Briar Chamberlain, and her boss is called Alex Chamberlain, Alex with an I. And basically there's one night that she's already out with her friends for some of her friends' birthday, and she receives a call from Alex Chamberlain asking if she can last minute babysit for her Briar because someone egged her house and the cops are coming over, and she doesn't want her daughter to be exposed to this, and she just wants to get her out of the house for a couple of hours or whatever, just the time that it's gonna last. And so Amira comes over, is like, just so you know, I was dressed for a birthday party and I had a couple of drinks. Are you okay with this? And Alex is like, absolutely fine, don't worry. It's literally just to get her out of the house while this is dealt with, and then we're good. So Amira arrives and she takes the kid, Briar, and decides to go to this really fancy middle class or upper class, I guess, grocery store, like the equivalent maybe of, not even Waitrose, I would say, probably Harrods or some shit that you would have in London, at least from my experience. So she takes her there because it's nearby the house, it's close by, and also because I guess she knows that Briar quite enjoys looking at nuts, out of all things, and is like, okay, this will keep her entertained for the time being. She's also come with her friend Zara, who's one of her close friends, because they were both together at that party, and this way she wasn't alone. And so they're both together, they're with Briar, the kid, in the middle of the grocery store, and to keep her entertained and make sure that she's happy and everything, they start dancing to this tune that Zara has on her phone, and so they're dancing around and goofing around basically. And I guess at some point the kid says something about her mom, and it's clear that she's talking about Alex and not Amira, who's right there. And this middle-aged woman, I think, who was walking past, comes back with the grocery store cop, or like guard or whatever it's called, and she's like, well, I thought it was a little bit weird, but you're just dancing around in this outfit. Clearly this is not your kid, because I heard the kid say something about her mommy, and that was obviously someone else she was talking about, so it's not you. And so I got worried, and yeah, so the guard, the grocery store guard or cop or whatever, is there questioning why Amira has this kid with her, and basically is acting like she stole the child, and is all like, who's the parents and where are they and everything, and asking her, questioning her with a bunch of questions. And this guy who's walking past is taking a video of it on his phone and be like, whoa, this is not okay, and like, you're not allowed to treat her like this, what the fuck. And so he's taking it all in on his phone in a video. All of these things are happening and it's chaos. So Amira ends up calling Briar's dad and saying like, can you come and pick her up? I'm at the grocery store nearby. Can you just like come over now? It's an emergency. And so he arrives and she explains what happens, and then she leaves. Obviously this all happens only because of the fact that Amira is a black woman and the child she's taking care of, Briar, is a white kid. And so that's why those people in the stores are like questioning it and being like, oh, you're not the mom, what are you doing with that kid? And that's also why the guy taking the video is like, you can't treat her like this, like that's racist, blah blah blah, etc. So this whole situation blows out of proportion, but she's like, don't post the video, I really don't want it, and then she leaves, and that's kind of the beginning situation. But that's it. We don't hear that much about it anymore, but it's kind of the cataclysmic event that starts everything. But it just starts a lot of other events that are going to happen, such as at some point Amira is on the train to see another friend, and she meets on the train the guy who took the video. His name is Kelly, and they reintroduce themselves to each other and just say hi and everything. And she pretty much invites him to have a drink with her friends at the end of her night because they're going to some place that he can just get to. And so they meet again. And then there's also the fact that Alex then tells the story to her group chat of friends on her WhatsApp group or whatever with her other, you know, like girlfriends from Manhattan. And she's like, what the fuck do I do? How do I solve this situation? I'm so worried that I'm gonna lose my babysitter because she's great and she takes great care of my daughter. And I'm really worried about that. And so like her friends are like advising her, sometimes with bad advice, and are like, oh, you should just call her, tell her you're so sorry, offer her your support, whether it's to ignore the situation and leave it be or lower her up, whatever it is, blah blah blah. But the book is split in two in a way because you have one chapter where we're focusing on Emira and then one chapter where we're focusing on Alex Chamberlain and then again on Emira and then again on Alex, etc. And the chapters that we're focusing on Alex kind of explain her background as well. She's kind of the typical social media influencer that rose to fame quite quickly thanks to being someone who became really, really good at asking for things from companies and being like, I'm launching an event, please send me some wine samples. And then they send her a bunch of wine bottles from their company or something. So she's that kind of person. And we get a whole background check on her, her whole story, how she met her husband, blah, 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 how she got her first kids and now her second kid, all of that information. And it just feels like all of the chapters that are focusing on her feel almost a little bit judgy in the way that they're told. I don't know how to explain this. I get that it's like an interesting character that you could almost feel like is a caricature of a character, like a caricature of real people. And it might not be the case, I'm sure there are real people like that, but it just feels like it's written in a caricatural way that feels a bit judgmental. I'm a bit bored of it. It just didn't do much for me, those chapters so far. I haven't been that interested in knowing more about her character. I just feel like it falls a bit flat. It feels like we're looking at that character from an outsider point of view rather than her POV or like a POV closer to her and her story. And like, I don't know, I almost feel like the writing style is very strongly worded in a way that makes me think there's very little feeling about anything that is happening. And I think that's kind of how I feel about the book so far, because although I enjoyed the first chapter and was really interested in knowing more, because that event was kind of the cataclysm for everything else, it just launched the whole story, but also it was quite eventful. The dialogues felt strong in there and just I understood everything that was happening. It was very clear cut and well written. And then as soon as we got off the first two chapters, it started feeling very unfeeling, unemotional, just all the characters that we're watching, because we're having almost like the POV of Emira and Alex, but third person. And a lot of the books that I read, you're in a third person POV, but you are focusing on one person and it's really like you're in their head. It's almost the same as if you were having first person POV. In this book, it's really not the case. It feels like we are the outsider observer and that's it. We're just an observer and it's very unfeeling, unemotional, and everything is sometimes detailed almost clinically and very descriptive. I feel like this book takes the whole show don't tell advice to an extreme that I'm not loving, because there are moments where you should tell. And for instance, there's a whole scene where Emira, obviously she finds Kelly really cute and they go out at some point and they end up having sex, and it's all happening in the first 100 pages, so I don't really feel like it's a spoiler. But like the entire interactions that she's had with him so far have felt very awkward and cringy, and then same like when they're having their night together. Every single time those dialogues feel very clunky and just the way that it's presented, I don't know how to feel about the guy. At the beginning, before she ends up like sleeping with him and everything, I was like, does she like him? Because I can't tell, because we don't have any information about how she feels about the guy. It's literally just the dialogues and what she does and what she says and then what he does and what he says, and that's it. It's just descriptive. And it doesn't tell us anything about how to feel about him and whether we should think that interaction was okay or if we should think it wasn't. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this book so far, is that it's good, it's well written, and it's not for me. And I'm really questioning right now. I've been talking for 16 minutes and I don't know, I feel like maybe I'm already wrapping up my thoughts as if I'm planning on dropping this book, and I feel like maybe I am. I feel really, really bad because I really wanted to enjoy this. And I'm half enjoying it, half not, just because I feel like I forced myself to read it tonight. Like I had dropped it at 50 pages and then picked it up again tonight, and I'm reading those 50 pages thinking I need to read, I need to finish this for this video. That's not a good reason enough for me to pick a book anymore. I need to stop doing that. I have been telling you guys that I'm trying to DNF books more often and just more when I need to, because I used to never DNF books and I would just go into reading slumps. And I can tell this book will probably put me in a reading slump if I force myself through it. And the only reason I'm not in a reading slump is because I'm currently reading another book at the same time on my Kindle, and I'm really enjoying that one. And so every time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna read this one, and then I'm like, oh, I should really read Such a Fun Age instead, because that's the book I'm meant to be doing for this video. It's a shame because I feel like it's good. I feel like it's a good book, but also a book I don't want to pick up. Just a story that doesn't interest me and a writing style that's not really doing it for me. And yeah, I feel a bit bored. I'm not compelled by the characters. I'm not that interested in them. I don't want to root for them. I mean, I want to root for Amira, and I love Briar. Like, I love their relationship. Amira and the kids have such a cute relationship, and I really like reading about it. But there's not enough of it in the book that I'm like, yes, this is going to be the main part of it and I'm going to love reading about this. So I don't know. I just feel like I want to drop it and I'm really hesitating. I think that's my conclusion. This is such a chaotic video. I'm drinking my Prosecco and just trying to think about reasons to keep on going, and yet I'm like, I want to stop and I just want to do what I want to do, not force myself through things. So I'm gonna DNF this book. I was just a little bit curious, so I went on to Goodreads and just checked the comments below and the votes, you know, like the ratings that people give the book. So I really like Read with Cindy's channel, and she actually wrote a review and I follow her on Goodreads, so because I think she rated it 4 stars and it's quite a positive comment. So I just wanted to let you know of the reasons why, if you want to pick up the book, it would be a really good book for you to read, unlike for me. So it says here, while this is a simplistic story, it's still a very accurate portrayal of performative activism and woke culture. I recognize so many of the central characters within people who exist in real life. I found myself nodding along to the book's portrayals of liberal white allyship and the way people often believe their own self-serving narratives. So yeah, I completely agree, and I feel like I would probably have thought the same thing had I continued on. But there's other people who have commented similar things to what I was thinking while I was reading the book. So let me just get through those comments. So in the popular answered question, someone asked, I honestly don't understand what all the hype is about. I became increasingly annoyed and distracted by all the unnecessary details and descriptions, especially during conversations. Why do I need to know that someone is chewing kale while talking or putting down a salt shaker? And what mother asks a sitter who had been drinking to take a 3-year-old to a store after 10 p.m. Just dumb. And I agree that someone seems to be answering that one and saying like that's the point, to see how the mom was acting weird and it's just has complete disregard for her daughter. Fine. But I agree with the first part of the question here, which is I felt the exact same way about the way the descriptions were just like ongoing. Yeah, someone else here saying that besides the relationship between Amira and her charge, which was genuine and heartwarming, the story itself failed to draw me in deeply enough to become passionate about it. And that's pretty much it. Like, I really liked Amira's relationship with Briar, but that's it. Like, no one else was interesting enough, and none of the other relationships have been feeling interesting enough for me to want to continue. That's it. I'm gonna stop rambling on about this book now because I have been doing 2 video commentaries about 15 minutes each just to justify the fact that I was gonna stop reading it, and that feels a little bit excessive. Again, I'm gonna conclude this video by saying that I think I really just enjoyed Frederick Backman's book. Is the only one out of the 3 that I felt really connected to and that I really enjoyed so much more than the other 2. And so I feel like I enjoy his writing style specifically and his books, but not the contemporary genre in general. I just don't think it's a genre that's made for me. And although I pushed through Eleanor Oliphant, I felt kind of the same way about it that I did about Such a Fun Age, which is I didn't connect to the characters, didn't love them, didn't love, you know, the story. I thought it was a little bit boring, nothing much was happening, no one was getting murdered, like come on. And it just felt like I had to push through, I had to pick it up, force myself to pick it up, otherwise I wouldn't have on my own. And this is how I thought I was going to feel about Such a Fun Age, which is why I decided to DNF it earlier on, rather than do the same thing. But yeah, I think it's just not a genre that's for me, and I totally understand if you guys disagree with me, because a lot of people love the contemporary genre, but I'm more of the give me magic and murder type of person, rather than the give me a real resonating with real life type of story. If you enjoyed watching me struggle to pick up books, and if you like this video, please leave a like, leave a comment down below. I always try to respond. Consider subscribing, ringing that bell, all that jazz, and I guess I will see you guys in the next one.